Hi, I am Olivia, and my mother shoved a tattered dress in my hands, sneering, "Marry him, or you're out of this family." I didn't know his name, but I learned he held a secret fortune that could crush everyone who tried to bury me. My mother handed me a faded dress and said, "You're marrying him, no more questions." I didn't even know his last name. I didn't even get a cake with my name on it. They called it a wedding, but it felt more like a funeral. "You're lucky anyone wants you," she hissed, her eyes cold as she turned away. And just when they thought they'd gotten rid of me, I learned the man they forced on me was richer than everyone in that room combined. The morning my mother handed me the dress, it was still damp at the hem, a shapeless yellowish thing with sleeves that didn't match, and a neckline that sat wrong, like it had been sewn in a hurry by someone who didn't like me very much. She didn't look me in the eye when she said it. "You're marrying that man next Tuesday." No more arguments. That was it. Not even a congrats, just an order disguised as a blessing. I was 28, but in her tone, I was still a child. A burden she couldn't wait to shove into someone else's arms. My father sat in his recliner, as he always did, eyes glazed over the local newspaper like it held more importance than the life I was about to be thrown into. That, and the soft snicker from my sister Hannah, who didn't even try to hide her smirk. "Don't mess this up, Olivia," she taunted. "It's your only shot." I stood there holding the dress, still damp, still unwanted. Growing up, I had been the quiet one, the obedient one, the one who said, "Okay, Mama," and "Yes, Daddy," even when it hurt. I gave up a full-ride scholarship to stay home and take care of Aunt Evelyn when she got sick. My sister got to finish school, move away, live her own life. I stayed behind in the crumbling house with paint peeling off the porch columns and dreams peeling off my ribs. In this family, silence was mistaken for gratitude. I didn't say anything when Mama handed me off like an old shoe. I didn't say anything when she said, "This is where girls like you belong." The man, Mason, had come around twice. Once to fix the church's plumbing, once to drop off a donation basket. I knew nothing about him except that he worked construction and didn't talk much. That was good enough for them. A quiet man for a quiet girl, no questions asked. The wedding happened 3 days later, in 2019. It was held in the small community chapel in Oxford, Mississippi, where the carpet smelled like mildew and the pews creaked like they were crying. Just the pastor looking half asleep, and a handful of silent onlookers who came more out of habit than celebration. Someone handed out a folded paper program. My name was misspelled on the front. Olivia Grace Carter. I pointed it out to Mama. She glanced, shrugged. "It doesn't matter anymore." "You're his problem now," she muttered under her breath. No speech, no toast, no photographs, just a nod from the pastor and a "You may go now." After we signed the license, I heard Mama lean toward Hannah, her whisper sliding through the stale air like a blade. Thank God we finally got rid of her. And that was that. No hug, no ride home. No, "We'll miss you." I watched as I climbed into Mason's dusty pickup truck, the door groaning as I pulled it shut. My white dress, cheap, borrowed, too tight around the arms, wrinkled under the seatbelt as he started the engine. We didn't speak. I held on to my purse, though it barely held anything. No phone, no wallet, just a single handkerchief, white cotton with a stitched letter A in one corner. Aunt Evelyn gave it to me before she passed in 2018. As she always said, no matter what they take from you, keep something with your name on it. I clenched it in my fist as the truck rattled forward. I looked out the window. I just kept hearing Mama's voice. "This is where girls like you belong." I wanted to cry, but I wouldn't. Not in front of this stranger I was now legally tied to. Not in the dress someone else picked. Not because they'd won. No. If I was going to cry, it would be in silence. And later. Mason drove with both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. He wasn't unkind, just unreadable. I wondered what he thought of me. I wondered if he knew I had no choice. I wondered if he even cared. "I didn't ask for this either," he said suddenly, his voice low, breaking the silence like a stone through glass. Instead, I sat still, let the ride take me. This wasn't a honeymoon. This was exile. Hours passed and the trees gave way to signs of life. Charleston, South Carolina. I caught the name on a road sign. He pulled into a driveway behind a larger whitewashed house and parked beside a small guest cottage. I expected mildew and neglect. Instead, I found mildew and neglect. Mason stepped out first, walked around, and opened my door without saying anything. I followed him inside, clutching my purse like it was the only thing I had left from the girl I used to be. The guest house had just one bedroom, a small living room, and a galley kitchen. Everything looked second-hand, but cared for. Folded towels, swept floor, dishes drying neatly in a rack. "You can take the bed," he said. "I'll sleep out here, if that's all right." He didn't wait for a reply, just moved past me and opened a drawer, pulling out a few tools. Then he knelt in front of a crooked cabinet door and began tightening the hinge. The quiet was disorienting. Not the tense kind I grew up with, filled with glares and guilt, but gentle. He cooked something simple. Eggs, toast, and a slice of avocado. Instead, he just said, "There's water in the fridge." "You don't need to talk if you don't want to." I sat at the table. I ate, and for the first time in days, maybe longer, my breath came steady, not like a gasp for survival, more like air I was allowed to take. He fixed that cabinet. Then he folded a dish towel. Then he stepped outside without a word. I stayed in that chair, fork idle on my plate. Later that night, after I showered and changed into an old t-shirt he'd left folded on the bed, I turned on my phone. Just one message from my mother. "Don't come back. It's done. We've moved on." 5 words. "You were never wanted." Hannah's follow-up text read, "A dagger meant to twist." I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone or scream or ask why. I just powered it off and set it face down on the nightstand. They cut the cord so cleanly I wondered if I ever mattered at all. I laid on the edge of the bed, too tired to get under the covers, still half-dressed, with that stitched handkerchief pressed into my palm like a rosary. I just slept, and that was enough. By morning, I sat up slowly, the ache in my body less sharp than it had been. My eyes burned, but they were dry. The smell of toast reached me before I stepped out of the bedroom. On the kitchen table sat a plate of scrambled eggs and buttered toast. Steam still rose from the mug of coffee next to it. Mason was outside. He was watering the tomato plants with slow, even movements. I stepped onto the porch. He looked up. "Thank you," I said, my voice a little hoarse from sleep or disuse. "You don't owe me anything," he replied, setting the watering can down. "Eat while it's warm." My stomach growled. I sat with the plate in front of me, steam rising softly off the toast. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until the smell hit. Eggs, pepper, butter, just starting to cool. But it wasn't just the food, it was the note. Folded neatly beside the fork, written in simple ballpoint ink. "Saw yours was running low." A new bottle of shampoo sat next to it on the table. Something inside me paused. He hadn't asked if I needed it. He hadn't asked if he could buy it. He just noticed. Noticed without comment, without needing praise, without making it feel like a transaction. "I see you, Olivia," he said quietly, standing in the doorway, his eyes steady. It's hard to trust gentle hands when the last ones left bruises I had to cover with makeup. I stood and walked to the window. He was back in the garden again, quietly turning the soil with a hand spade. 2 days had passed since I arrived, each one folding into the next without friction. Mason never spoke loudly. He knocked before entering the hallway, asked nothing about my past. He cooked, cleaned, repaired a broken window in the shed. Yet something didn't sit right. It started with his tools. One afternoon, I reached under the sink to grab a sponge and spotted the toolbox he kept tucked there. Sleek, new stainless steel, Makita drills, Bosch laser levels, custom hex sets. Nothing a regular part-time handyman in this part of South Carolina would throw cash at. Then there was the stove. It gleamed like something out of a luxury apartment magazine. I'd only seen one like it once in a showroom in Raleigh. $4,000, 0 cents, minimum. High-end stainless steel, 6 burners, a griddle, even a warming drawer. When I asked, He just glanced over his shoulder and said, "It came with the place, right? And I came with a fairy tale. Or maybe I bought it to hide who I really am," he added, his voice cryptic, sparking unease. The next morning I woke to the sound of a car starting earlier than usual. I peeked through the curtain. Mason had traded his dusty pickup for a charcoal gray sedan, sleek and silent. He wore a button-down shirt and dark slacks. No tool belt. No paint stains. He was gone before I could ask. So I dressed quickly, tied back my hair, and slipped out 8 minutes later. I followed at a distance, careful not to get too close. He turned into the underground lot of a high-rise building I'd never noticed before. I pulled up on the opposite sidewalk and waited. And then, there he was, Mason, my husband. He walked through the automatic doors like he belonged there. No toolbox, no overalls, just confidence and quiet. What kind of handyman walks into a building where people wear Rolexes and talk mergers? I cooked dinner that night. Nothing special, just pan-fried chicken and green beans. He came in late, smelled faintly of cologne, not sweat, but he greeted me with the same gentle nod, took off his shoes at the door like always. Over dinner, I finally broke the silence. "You said you fix things." He paused, looked at me, waited. "What kind of things are in that building downtown?" His fork hovered mid-air. Then, just as calmly, he set it down and offered a half smile. "I fixed what people break when they forget what matters. But some things, Olivia, I keep secret to protect what's mine," he said, his gaze piercing. I didn't push. I just nodded and took another bite. That night, I lay awake a little longer than usual. He didn't make sense. The world I came from always made sense. Cruelty passed down like heirlooms, silence mistaken for love, shame woven into every Sunday dress. But this was uneven. This man gave me a guest house, a $4,000 0-cent stove, shampoo with my name practically on it, yet never once asked me to give anything back. So when he handed me a cup of tea the next morning, I didn't hesitate. I smiled and said thank you. I didn't know what he was hiding, I thought, but for once, I didn't want to run. I wanted to wait. Though Mason didn't stop me, he just leaned in the doorway that morning, arms folded, his eyes steady as always. "You don't owe them anything, Olivia." I zipped the side of my dress slowly, letting the words hang in the quiet room. "Maybe not," I said, "but I still want to believe they'll look me in the eye this time." He didn't nod. Didn't shake his head either. Just stepped aside and let me pass. The drive from Charleston back to Oxford felt longer this time, though it was only 4 hours. Mason had offered to come with me. I told him no. They said it's just a small celebration for my sister, I had explained. No need to make it a thing. But the moment I pulled up to the house, my childhood home, I knew something wasn't right. I stepped inside to music, clinking glasses, and the unmistakable scent of catered food. My mother saw me, or rather, she looked through me. "Oh," she said flatly, "there you are." She gestured vaguely toward the back patio. "They're all out there. Try not to make an entrance." At an event I was invited to. I walked through the living room. I held my small wrapped gift tighter. I'd spent the past week stitching a linen wall hanging for my sister, her favorite verse embroidered carefully by hand. Outside, my sister stood near a glass table piled high with gift bags. Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Neiman Marcus. I placed my handmade present beside them. My sister turned, flicked her hair over one shoulder, and offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Didn't expect you'd actually show." "I was invited," I said evenly. Someone handed her a champagne flute. She didn't offer me one. "You don't belong here anymore," she whispered, her smile venomous. Eventually the crowd hushed for the big reveal, a 2-tiered cake covered in pink sugar roses. In gold script, it read, "To our beautiful firstborn." I blinked. My throat tightened, but I said nothing. "Well, you're not the one people came to celebrate," my sister said sweetly, and a few nearby guests chuckled. I stepped back, bumping into a waiter. I mumbled an apology. Later, one of my mother's old friends approached her near the punch bowl. She was smiling, nodding, holding a paper plate of cake. "You must be so proud of your daughters," she said. My mother didn't hesitate. "I only have one daughter, the other. She was a lesson we had to learn the hard way. I didn't drop my plate. I didn't storm out or yell. I just stood. I carried my plate to the kitchen. Quiet, careful, set it in the sink and turned to leave. As I crossed the hall, I heard her voice again. My mother's low but not soft. She's just a charity case, you'll see. This won't last. She'll crawl back begging, Hannah added, her voice sharp enough to cut. My feet moved on instinct. I didn't know if I was shaking from rage or grief, but I knew I couldn't stay another second. I stepped into the cool air of the porch. I didn't cry, but something inside me tore loose that night. But it was the silence back in Charleston that felt heavier. When I got home, Mason must have left it for me. I stepped inside quietly. I hung up my bag and went straight to the back room. Mason had left a folded blanket on the edge of the bed and a cup of tea, still warm. Chamomile, my favorite. He always remembered. I didn't drink it. That night, I didn't talk much. I didn't explain what had happened. Mason didn't ask. Instead, he made dinner. Something simple, grilled chicken, sweet potatoes, a salad with slices of peach. He placed the plate on the table without a word and sat across from me. You didn't have to go, he said finally. I know, I replied. He stood, walked to the stove, and poured the rest of the tea into the sink. You don't have to explain anything, but you're not a ghost here. You can exist. They don't deserve your tears, he said, his voice firm, eyes meeting mine. Instead, I just nodded and went to bed. She's just a charity case. You'll see. This won't last. The next morning, I was folding the blanket back into place when Mason tapped gently on the doorframe. Invitation came for you, he said, holding a cream-colored envelope. Well, for us, I think. It was heavy cardstock, thick and formal. Dinner at the main house, Mr. Bennett, the owner. Friday at 6. That's new, I said, frowning. What's the occasion? He shrugged. I didn't answer right away. Friday came fast. I wore a dark green dress, not fancy, just neat. Mason wore a blazer I hadn't seen before, charcoal gray and sharp across his shoulders. We walked across the lawn together. The Bennett home was grand, not in a flashy way, but like old wealth. A woman in pearls opened the door. Mr. Mason, she said brightly, eyes flicking over to me. Oh, we weren't expecting a +1. My stomach tightened inside. As champagne flutes clinked and laughter bubbled from every corner, I drifted toward the back patio. That's when I heard it. She's just a guest, right? A voice whispered behind a folding screen. I mean, we only invited Mr. Mason. She's not expected. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I found the powder room and locked the door. Stared at myself in the mirror. I pulled the handkerchief from my purse, the one with the stitched A, the only thing I had taken with me the day I left that church in Oxford. You're more than they'll ever know, I whispered to my reflection, gripping the handkerchief, but the tears came. And this time I let them. I sat on the floor, knees drawn up, and cried. When the storm quieted, I fixed my face and walked out. Dinner continued like nothing had happened. I smiled, said thank you, clinked my glass. Later that night, back at the guest house, I stood by the sink washing off my makeup. When Mason entered, I didn't turn around. If you want a clean life, I said softly, you can have it. I won't be the stain they warned you about. He said nothing. Not that night. You're not a stain, Olivia, he said at last, his voice breaking. You're the only truth I've found. I didn't wait for his answer that night. After I said it, I won't be the stain they warned you about. I just walked away into the bedroom, into the dark, into silence. By morning, I stood in the kitchen pouring coffee when Mason walked in, buttoning the cuff of his sleeve. You're up early, he said. I don't sleep much lately. He reached for a banana, peeled it. There's a dinner tonight at the Bennett house. They asked if I'd bring someone. I turned skeptical. They asked for me? He paused. They said +1. I said your name. I took a sip. That's not the same. No, he agreed, but it's a start. That evening, I stood in front of the small mirror in our hallway and tied my hair back into a simple knot. No makeup, no ornaments, just the stitched handkerchief tucked neatly into the sleeve of my dress. Navy blue, plain, but dignified. I didn't dress to impress anyone. I dressed to remind myself who I was. They don't have to expect me to exist for me to take up space, I murmured. Mason glanced over but said nothing. Inside, a woman in a black dress rushed over, clipboard in hand. "Oh, thank goodness, Mr. Mason," she chirped. "We need someone to help plate the hors d'oeuvres. We're behind." She turned to me without even asking who I was and handed me a tray. "Just arrange them neatly, napkin under each." I looked at Mason, but he had been pulled aside by the host. I could have corrected her. I could have set the tray down, but I didn't. I took the tray, walked toward the kitchen, and arranged the shrimp canapes with deliberate care. Neat rows, small touches of parsley, everything balanced. I glided through the crowd, offering plates to men in cufflinks and women with diamonds. The power of invisibility is that you hear everything. Halfway through the dinner, I heard the click of heels. A familiar gait, Hannah. She entered like she was walking onto a stage, hair curled perfectly. She didn't glance at me, walked right past. "Darlings," she beamed to the host's wife, "you outdid yourselves." The host lifted his glass. "To new beginnings, to healing," Hannah toasted. I kept moving. Plate in hand, silence in my chest. Then came the moment. Hannah, reaching too far for a wine glass, tipped her flute. The red spilled across the tablecloth like a wound. I stepped forward, pulling a clean napkin from the service tray. "Here," I said, holding it toward her. She took it. "Oh, thank you, dear." I didn't move. "You're welcome, Mom." The word hit like thunder, cracking through fine china. She looked up, confused at first. Then recognition crept in, slow and stunned. "Olivia!" I smiled, calm, unapologetic. "Still just a stain, right?" "You'll never be me," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. I set the empty tray down on the table, turned and walked straight out the same door she came in. I didn't rush. I didn't cry. I didn't even look back. I walked past the tall hedges lining the Bennett estate. By the time I reached the guest house, my phone buzzed. A text from Hannah. "You've embarrassed yourself enough. Stay gone." "We'll make sure you regret this," her next message warned. I didn't reply. I didn't even breathe hard. I deleted it. Nothing to hold on to. Nothing left to say. Mason was already inside when I returned. He didn't ask questions, just poured tea, set the mug on the small table beside me, and sat quietly on the edge of the couch across the room. I was still standing when he finally spoke. "You asked who I am," he said. "I think you're ready now." I sat down, let the silence answer for me. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "My last name isn't Harper," he began. I blinked. "What? It's Bennett." He continued, "My mother owns Bennett Enterprises, furniture, real estate, private equity. She wanted me to inherit it all. I said no. I started my own company, small, quiet, sustainable. I didn't want her name on it. I didn't want hers or mine. So I used Harper, my grandfather's name. I couldn't speak. He looked at me carefully. "I never told you because I didn't want to test you. I just wanted to be around someone who didn't see a bank account. I hid it to keep you safe from my family's greed," he confessed, his voice heavy. "And everyone else?" I finally asked. He shrugged. "They always wanted something, a position, a contract, a connection. You were the first person who didn't ask me for anything except peace and space, and maybe a little grace. Well, I guess I failed that tonight." He shook his head. "You didn't fail. You stood up. That's something most people never do." I sat back, still absorbing, and then I said it. "Then it's time they hear my voice too." He looked up, surprised. I stood, walked toward the little dresser by the window, pulled out the handkerchief, the one with the stitched A. I folded it neatly, slid it into my pocket. "I have something to say," I said, "and this time I'll be the one holding the mic." The next morning I woke early. I tied my hair back, opened my laptop, and stared at the blinking cursor. I didn't wait for a sign. I typed, "Subject, Bennett Scholarship Fund." "A statement from Olivia," I wrote. I didn't hold back. I told the truth. Not just about Hannah, but about girls like me. Girls told to disappear, told they were stains. I wrote about my wedding, the missing name on the cake, the silence, the rooms where I was present but never seen. I named names carefully, calmly. I didn't slander. I documented. Then I listed 3 small community colleges and 8 rural schools with high dropout rates. I am not your daughter. I am your reminder. And I will make sure you remember me with every girl you tried to forget. I hit send. My hand didn't shake. It took less than 10 days for everything to shift. After I sent the email, silence lingered for a few days. But then the messages started coming in. Principals, journalists, alumni. Some had read every word. Some had only read the subject line, but they responded, and so did Mason. One evening, he handed me a navy blue envelope, thicker than the others, the Bennett crest embossed in gold. An invitation, formal, polished. Bennett Foundation Annual Gala, honoring legacy, elevating voices. Inside, my name wasn't printed at the bottom, it was at the top. Co-director. I looked up at him. He smiled softly. It's yours. Every part of it. Then I did what felt right. I got to work. By the time the night of the gala arrived in 2020, the event was held at the Charleston Place. I stood outside for a moment, hand on the door, my clutch tight in my fingers. Inside it, my stitched handkerchief rested neatly, not for comfort anymore, but as a reminder. I stepped in. And yet, as I moved, something shifted. I wasn't the girl they'd ignored at dinner parties. I wasn't just a wife or the charity case. I was something else now, something they hadn't prepared for. At the far end, Hannah stood near the stage, her voice lilting through practiced laughter. She wore red as always. She spotted me for a moment and blinked. The announcement came a few minutes later. Mason walked up to the podium, crisp in a charcoal suit. I've been part of this foundation in silence for years, he began. But tonight, I want to introduce the person who's been writing its next chapter. She's been called a mistake, a stain, a burden. But tonight, she holds the pen. He turned, reached out. Olivia Bennett. I didn't hesitate. I stepped onto the stage with the weight of every insult, every dismissal, every empty room I'd been erased from. The mic felt cool under my fingers. I began, You made me sharper. You made me listen when silence could have drowned me. I scanned the room. My past doesn't vanish. It's sewn into me like a thread through every dress I wasn't allowed to choose. Every meal I served when I was supposed to be seated. But I'm still here. For every girl told she belongs in the background, for every daughter who's told to hush, I want to say this. You belong wherever you decide to stand. Then it broke, applause real and rising. But it didn't matter. They were facing me now. When I stepped off the stage, Hannah was waiting, arms folded, chin high, voice sharp. So, you came to flaunt your husband's money. I didn't flinch. I reached into my clutch, pulled out the ring Mason had given me, the one I hadn't worn in public since the wedding. I slipped it on right there in front of her. I came to return what was always mine. You'll fall, Olivia, she warned, her eyes blazing. And I'll be there to watch. I walked past her. Before leaving the stage entirely, I paused, removed the stitched handkerchief from my bag and draped it gently across the microphone. I didn't need it anymore. I woke before the birds. I stretched under the soft cotton sheets and listened. A kettle whistled. Mason was up. My eyes lingered on the small garden patch by the porch. This isn't a fairy tale ending, I whispered into the stillness. It's something better. It's mine. While Mason prepared breakfast, I wandered toward the old oak table by the window. A stack of envelopes waited, some invitations, some congratulations, and then one, thinner than the rest, bearing the crest of a university I hadn't thought about in years. Hands steady, I tore it open. Dear Ms. Bennett, we are pleased to inform you of your admission into the part-time Medical Foundations program, spring term. I hadn't let myself hope. Not really. I'd applied on a dare, a private one. They'd said I was too late, too old, too average, but I knew now. I'd never been average. I'd just been silenced. Mason walked in with 2 mugs, one for him, dark and bold, one for me, lighter, with honey. He glanced at the paper in my hand. That it? I nodded. That's it. And then, of course, it buzzed. My phone hidden in the kitchen drawer most days now. I picked it up. Hannah. I stared at the screen. This time, I answered. Her voice crackled. I heard your speech, she said. I didn't know you could speak like that. I sipped my tea. I always could. You just never listened. I was wrong. She finally said, it wasn't an apology, it was a confession. And for the first time, I didn't twist myself into forgiving. I didn't reach across the line she'd refused to cross my whole life. That's not mine to fix, I said. I've already chosen healing. You'll never escape us, she hissed before I hung up. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. Some things don't need to be held anymore. Some weights aren't yours. That afternoon, I packed a bag and headed to campus in Columbia, South Carolina. Orientation wasn't for another month, but I wanted to see it, touch the place I'd fought so long to believe I was worthy of. I stood there, not trying to fit in, just breathing. A young man with a clipboard passed by, glanced at my badge, and smiled. Dr. Bennett? I laughed gently. Not yet, he nodded. Well, soon. I looked down at my hand, but what grounded me wasn't gold. It was the folded handkerchief still tucked in my coat pocket. The same one they gave me on a day meant to bury me. The same one I carried when I decided to rise. Yet, as I walked forward, I knew freedom came with a cost. Scars that would linger, reminding me I'd fought for every step, but never again would I bow to their shadows.